All wings report in. Austin standing by.
Mike, standing by.
Austin, standing by.
The Rogue 3 podcast is locked on target. Whether it's movies, shows, books, comics, or more, we're going to be coming to you from a galaxy far, far away to celebrate all things Star Wars. Hey guys, welcome back to the Rogue 3 podcast. We're here to talk to you about the new Tales of the Underworld show. Well, new is generous. It came out about a month ago, but we wanted to talk about it. And so you're joined by, I'm joined by Austin and Mike. And we're going to be talking about Tales of the Underworld. So first off, what is Tales of the Underworld? What is Tales?
It started years ago with Tales of the Jedi. That was the first instance of these stories, and we really didn't know what it was going to be. And it started with Count Dooku and Ahsoka, and it was each character got 3 shorts that paralleled each other in different aspects of their life, different stories from their life. And it was a totally new format. We had never seen video kind of shorts. They're each 15 minutes long or so, and kind of an anthology about different characters. And it was the first time we ever saw that.
At first, I remember thinking, I don't know if we were going to get like Tales of the Jedi season 2, or I don't think we really knew what was going to happen in the future. It did eventually turn out to be an anthology season, where we started with Tales of the Jedi in 2022, Tales of the Empire in 2024, and now this year we have our 3rd season of the Tales series, Tales of the Underworld in 2025.
So this season, Tales of the Underworld focuses on 2 characters, just like the previous 2 did. This time focusing on Asajj Ventress and Cad Bane. Those characters originally shouldn't make their first appearances, but they are most known for being in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And they both appeared in projects since then as well. Notably, Cad Bane appeared in Bad Batch and the Book of Boba Fett. And then Asajj Ventress recently made her appearance in the last season of the Bad Batch as well, which was quite shocking because of where we last heard from Ventress. Back after the Clone Wars was canceled during the Disney purchase, they released a novel called The Dark Disciple, which if you don't remember from the first episode of our podcast, that was my favorite Star Wars book. So I was very excited about this. This was a book that combined the stories that were 8 episodes of Star Wars: The Clone Wars that were never released. These were written by George Lucas's daughter, Katie Lucas, and they kind of followed the story of Asajj Ventress and another character, Quinlan Vos, a Jedi. And to keep this very brief, the story of the book was that the Jedi Council assigned Quinlan Vos with the task of assassinating Count Dooku, and he enlisted the help of Asajj Ventress, Count Dooku's former apprentice, to execute that plan. I won't get into the weeds of everything, but over the course of the book, they fall in love, and at the end of the book, Asajj Ventress sacrifices herself to save Quinlan Vos's life. And the book ends with Quinlan Vos and Obi-Wan Kenobi laying her to rest on Dathomir to let her join with the Night Sisters. And that was the last we heard from Ventress until she showed up very much alive many years after that occurred in the Bad Batch. And that's where her story takes place.
I think we were all a little surprised to see her show up alive in the Bad Batch out of nowhere. There was a little bit of concern that maybe she would just be alive and we would ignore the events of Dark Disciple. So it's nice that we've addressed that a little bit in these episodes. Just before we get started, I want to go ahead and mention that these episodes were written by Matt Mishnevets. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. He wrote several episodes for Star Wars Rebels. He was the lead writer for Clone Wars Season 6 and 7. He was the staff writer for the Bad Batch. He did write the Citadel episodes, the Umbara episodes, and the Bad Batch episodes of the Clone Wars. He also wrote the story for Jedi Fallen Order. He has quite the Star Wars history behind him. All of those are incredible episodes. And Jedi Fallen Order is obviously just an incredible video game. It is exciting. He's going to be writing for the new Maul Shadow Lord series. So I'm excited to see what he does with that show. And let's jump into it. We're going to break these down by arcs. So not going to necessarily talk about episode by episode, but we are going to talk about Asajj's arc, and then we're going to talk about Cad Bane's arc. Mike, do you want to go ahead and get us started?
Yeah, so when we open this first episode, it's called A Way Forward, and we open with Quinlan Voss carrying Asajj into the bowels of Dathomir, essentially, where we've seen these almost other instances of something similar, like the living waters on Mandalore, and he's carrying, and Obi-Wan Kenobi is also there, and he lays her in the water, and they both walk away, and then you hear this ghostly Mother Talzin, the leader of the Night Sisters' voice, reaching out to Asajj, essentially giving her two options.
Yeah, she has the option to either join her Night Sisters in the afterlife or come back, but give up her connection to Quinlan Voss. And as evidenced by her being alive, she chose to come back to Earth, or not Earth, but come back to life and pursue a life without her heart's desire, her true love. And so this was a very like interesting scene, because I think of all the scenes we've had in Star Wars, this might be one of the least accessible starts to a project we've ever had. Like, it's picking up like in the middle of a book that a lot of people didn't read, featuring characters that you've never really seen interact in one time. So is definitely in the weeds. But as someone that had read the book, I was very happy.
It's funny. I think if you're watching these chronologically, the last you would have seen of Asajj Ventress is probably in the Wrong Jedi arc, no? Where she and Ahsoka are walking through Coruscant together, and then she's just gone. And she has this entire story before we pick up right back here again, where she's alive. Now, just to bring up the novel again, I did reread the last chapter of the novel, or the last section of the chapter, just because I wanted to see how these two scenes compared. A lot of times in Star Wars, we'll see the same scene in different mediums, and it's not always going to be the same. So in this particular scene, in the book, Quinlan Voss is walking to the waters with Obi-Wan Kenobi, just like in the show. However, Asajj Ventress is actually in some kind of casket that's floating, and he does talk to her a little bit. However, he mostly speaks to her while he was in the casket, and he uses the Force to lift her up and gently lay her into the waters. And he does hear the word sister as she's fading into the water. In this version, of course, he's carrying her, just like in the concept art it shows for the original episode. He's carrying her. And he says, she spoke of returning here. I will always love you. And then he lays her down into the waters, with Obi-Wan Kenobi standing over him. It's the same general premise, but it does deviate a little bit than what's shown in the book. The big thing here is different mediums are going to show events differently. The way we access events is going to be different in different mediums. What's right for the book might not be right for TV, and what's right for TV might not be right for the book. So even though they occurred and it's really slightly, it's not very different ways, both events are representing the same event that did happen.
I always look at it as a certain point of view, right? That these mediums are going to tell the same general story, but they're going to tell them in slightly different manners. And that's all the same to me.
Exactly.
I also think that this opening scene with Asajj Ventress and her getting this option to either go to the afterlife or choose to live but give up love is very reminiscent of a choice that Anakin has. And he makes the different choice, right? He chooses the love and descends down a dark path, whereas Asajj decides to not do that, not just pursue the love, that she's going to give it up, and then she's able to return to life. And as we see throughout these episodes, she's able to do a lot of really good things. And it's that choice that is a very Star Wars choice of, do you choose to go after your love at all costs, or do you choose to give it up? And here she chooses to give it up.
She picks the selfless option rather than picking the selfish option. All right. Well, that little scene that happens, and then we're transported into the future after the Clone Wars. The Empire's taken over, and Ventress is now an enforcer for a transportation company, which is kind of interesting.
And based on the timeline, based on what we see around her with the stormtroopers, the TK stormtroopers, this makes it feel like it is set after the Bad Batch, because in the Bad Batch, it's clones. Clones are getting phased out, but it's not just all the TK stormtroopers from the original trilogy. And so it seems like we've jumped even past the time when we see Asajj Ventress with the Bad Batch with Omega on Pabu, which is just a wild jump. It is a big difference between the end of Dark Disciple. This is months, if not years later.
So on the planet, we really get the sense that she's kind of done running. She wants to settle. She's looking for peace. Her employer, actually, even noticing her skill, wants to start a little business with her. And Asajj doesn't want that life. She says she gave up that life and she's done with that. And she just wants to be alone and to live her life in peace. Unfortunately, just as the Jedi often do, they come running in and ruining Asajj Ventress's life.
Yeah, we see a new character to us, a human boy. We later learn his name is Lyko. Comes in trying to buy passage off planet, but he doesn't have the money. And the way she learns he's a Jedi is he tries to use a Jedi mind trick on the Dockmaster, and quickly there's a situation where stormtroopers come in and Ventress uses a mind trick on him. But when they mention that there's money involved, the Dockmaster, she tries to give them both up, and a big chase ensues where Ventress is annoyed, but she's continuing to save this poor, like, probably Padawan that's on the run and doesn't know how to not be a Jedi.
And I like that we see her use the Jedi mind trick, right? That's why it's always been called as Jedi mind trick. And so to me, that was an example or a reference that she's using more of the light side of the Force. The Sith, we don't really see them. Why would you do a Jedi mind trick when you could just force your way in? And that's not what she's doing here. So it's kind of indicative of that she's trying to do things a little bit different than what she would have done in the past, that she has gone through a very significant change from who she used to be. And we just see more of that as she kind of helps protect Lyko and tries to get him connected with the hidden path that he is aware of, which I always wonder, how did he learn about it? How has the hidden path gotten out there for others to know about?
Well, and this is a great connection.
I'm glad you
say this is a great connection to the Obi-Wan TV show. Back 2 or 3 years ago when that came out, a big scene in that show is when Obi-Wan learns about the path, and he learns specifically that Quinlan Vos is a part of it. And in a similar scene here, Lyko mentions it to Ventress, and she's like, Quinlan Vos is involved, and now she is more incentivized to help this boy reach the path so she can be reunited with her love.
Which is interesting considering that the condition of her being brought back to life was that she gave up her heart's desire. So now it almost feels like she's pursuing it again. We do unfortunately see an Inquisitor. This is not an Inquisitor that we've ever seen before. And we don't have any name for him. We don't know if he's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever. Well, I guess we know what he's not, but and he makes a very brief appearance before an amateur Jedi Padawan kills him, which is embarrassing for him.
This is our May the Fourth tradition of having an Inquisitor die. Just about every year.
Right.
They have a cool new Inquisitor show up, and they just get dispatched very quickly.
You know what?
They're expendable.
Good for Lyko. They are expendable, and that's how they're built.
Yeah.
And that's where our first episode ends. And I do want to point out here that this particular arc is a little bit different than all the other Tales arcs. Usually the Tales arcs will jump between different time periods of the individual's life. And this one is basically just one long episode. If you shove these all together, it would make sense as one long episode. And so we're going to jump right into the next arc, or the next episode, excuse me, where Asajj and Lyko are looking for the hidden path.
Yeah, Asajj thinks she has a friend that she can reach out to, or a contact maybe is a better name for them. and it's someone we've seen before. It's Lats Razi, who is a Thelan bounty hunter. We see her with Asajj working in the Clone Wars for a few episodes, and she's also appears in the Dark Disciple book. She's also with with C-21 High Singer, a droid bounty hunter. And so she reaches out to them and connects with them to try and learn some information. And Rats has information. Again, I'm wondering, how did this person learn about the hidden path? It's supposed to be so hidden, and the Empire doesn't know about it until Jedi Survivor, when Darth Vader completely busts it open. But this random bounty hunter knows about the hidden path and is going to trade some information to both of these characters, both Asajj and Lyko, if they help her on a job.
They do have to start looking for an Imperial Shield relay unit on Casero. We actually did not get a name for the last planet. So it's nice that we got a named planet here. It does not appear in any other Star Wars media. But apparently what they do here is they build ships. Or something. They build something here. Watching through this little bit of the episode, we see that Lyko and Asajj get trapped inside this giant ball. That made me think of like the balls that sit on top of the Star Destroyers. I don't know if that's really what it's intended to be. It really looks like it. And it makes sense that if this takes place shortly after the Clone Wars, they wouldn't know exactly what those Star Destroyers would look like, which is why maybe it wasn't referenced. One comment that Asajj...
I think that is accurate, because in Return of the Jedi, when we see that ball blow up on the Superstar, I believe the Superstar Destroyer, right? That's when the shields go down and then the A-Wing flies into the bridge. And so I think that is the center of locus for the shield. So that this shield relay is in that system. I think you're right.
This is something I really like that Star Wars does when it ties these things together, but it doesn't just feed it to you. I really like when we get these little Easter eggs throughout the shows where, we learn more about, maybe what the insides of it look like, or that there's a shield relay unit that holds us all together. One thing that Asajj says that I thought was very interesting, she says, "In this business, you have no friends." What do y'all think about that?
It's the theme of the episode, is that when Lats and Asajj and Lyko are on the ship together, Asajj is like in the back of the ship doing something, and Lats kind of plants a seed of doubt in Lyko that she's like, this is a former separatist commander. She's not your friend. Help me out, and I'll get you where you need to go. I'll get you to the path. And Lyko seems to take her up on that offer. And Ventress is, in her usual fashion, she's being very prickly. Right? She's putting up these defenses around herself to not let Lyko get close. And kind of the function of this episode is like teaching us more about Ventress, is that she, even after Lyko tries to betray her, she still goes after him and to save him. And it's showing us even more that Ventress is pursuing the light side.
Yeah, I highlighted that scene when Lats tells him, she's going to betray you. And then as this episode unfolds and it goes awry, we learn that's the direct opposite. Asajj tries to continue to help Lyko. When we see him fall, she grabs hold and pulls him up. And even when he drops the shield relay unit, she says, "Leave it. It's not worth it. We're getting out of here." So we see this big change in her, that she is doing good things. She has made a dramatic change in her life.
Who didn't change was Lats Razi, who is behaving just the way we've always expected her to. And she betrays them. She wants to turn Lyko in to the Empire because there's a bounty on living Jedi, so she's keeping him alive, thank goodness. And she is just very easily dispatched by Ventress and Lyko. And fortunately, she somehow knows the location of the hidden path, and she gives it to them.
Well, it's easy to be dispatched when your weapon of choice is a feather boa made of knives. It's exactly a practical way to fight someone.
It really is. The design is really cool, but it's so impractical.
But yeah, we end the episode with Asajj and Lyko getting back together and being like, "Well, we're friends again, and we got to keep going." And they know where they're headed.
We don't know where they're headed because we come to an unnamed planet that is given no name, that's never appeared before.
For usual for Star Desert.
And per usual,
Yep.
per usual, it's a desert.
Another
Everyone
desert
loves being a
planet.
desert, right? Hey, why not? Why not?
It's easy to go to Tunisia and film.
Or CGI.
It is. And it's even easier to not go to Tunisia and just make it sand. So we're starting, they're walking through this planet, and they stumble upon this abode, if you will, with these droids standing outside, which is interesting considering that Asajj Ventress used to lead droids. And she meets a family and a grandfather and his granddaughter. And they're just surviving out there. They're not thriving. They're separatists from during the Clone Wars. He refers to her as Lady Ventress, which I don't know why, it just makes me laugh. Makes me think of when Darth Maul calls Ahsoka Lady Tano. I thought it was interesting. This grandfather, he mentioned that he's in this wheelchair now when the Raiders got him last time. So he hasn't been out since. That made me think of Klieg Lars when the last time he was out, he got hit by a different type of Raiders, and he was wheelchair bound from then on out. The characters really aren't very similar at all. I just thought it was an interesting, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but
it's
interesting little parallel.
It's neat to see the human separatist veteran, though. Like, most of what we see in Clone Wars, the separatist is like, corporate aliens that are like not actually involved in combat, and then actual droids. And so it's neat seeing like a human that was in the separatist military be involved. And it's also neat that we get to see like their perspective on what Ventress's role was. Like for the most part in Clone Wars, like we do see Ventress like giving command to battle droid armies and stuff, but for the most part, she's like an assassin spy thing where they send her in to do, recon. She gets Newt Gunray back when he's like captured by the Republic and everything. Like that's her role, is to like kill Jedi, do subterfuge and get out. And here he's like, we always felt safe knowing you were in Count Dooku's shadow. And and he felt like, I think he even said like fighting alongside you. And so that was a big, it's neat to see that brought to attention.
It's interesting that he speaks of her with such reverence, given that every time she seems to be in charge of battle droids, it just falls apart so horribly. Like it's almost like General Grievous. I know it's a children's cartoon, the Clone Wars is. It's almost like General Grievous, where at the beginning of the show, she's very bumbling and it feels like nothing is going her way. And she's kind of like this comedic villain. And so it's interesting that he talks about her with such reverence, especially considering that she leaves the Separatists a year and a half into the Clone Wars, maybe at the most. But I guess the Separatists wouldn't have put on a big billboard that Asajj Ventress was supposed to be killed by the.
I also like when the grandfather and Asajj are talking and he laments losing the war, and she brings up a theme that we've talked about multiple times, especially with Andor and other stories about one side losing the war, and she says no, like we all lost. Everyone lost the war. And the only person who won, in my opinion, is Darth Sidious, is Palpatine. He's the only victor in it. The Republic lost, the Jedi lost, the Separatists lost, and he's the victor in the end. And I think that's the general trend that we've seen in a lot of Star Wars media lately, is talking about that war as a war that no one won.
Well, and this is also like a pretty pivotal scene, because something important that happens in all three of these episodes is Ventress rejects a former part of her identity. So in the first episode, Mother Talzin says you can join the Night Sisters in the afterlife, and she chooses to not go with the Night Sisters. She chooses to be on Earth, or be alive. With the second episode, she has the opportunity to get back into bounty hunting. Like Latz is like, you're looking to get back into work again, and she says no, that's not work here. We'll do this one thing, but that's not my purpose here. And in this one, she has the opportunity to like reflect and revel in being former Separatist military general, and she rejects that part of herself too. Like she's getting rid of all these bad aspects of herself. And as we see, like her trajectory is going towards the light.
Austin, that is brilliant. I did not notice that. That's great.
Yeah, I had not
Um,
cued into that. And even in the first episode with the Inquisitor, that's also a
yeah.
rejection of some of her past as well, right?
Mhm.
That's such a good parallel. I never made
That's
that
awesome.
connection.
Nice call
Yeah.
out there. Um, well, Ventress agrees to help them because they're going to tell her where the hidden path is. Yay! Um, once again, people know. Everyone just knows where the
Well,
hidden path is.
they just know where what Cipher Canyon is.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
that location. That's the location they're looking for, where the path, but not what is associated. Because I imagine that grandfather at that moment, if he learned it was Jedi trying to escape,
That's true.
he
Very
would
true.
not like it.
She does agree to help them secure water from the raiders, and unfortunately, that goes poorly, just like every one of her other missions. And the raiders come out and they start attacking them, and they're escaping. And she comes to find out that they've been stealing the raiders' water. And the raiders don't really seem like the raiders you'd expect. They're actually kind of cute.
I really like them.
And I thought their design was adorable. I love them. We've never seen them before. They don't have a species name. But I'd like to see them again. I think it'd be such a waste not to have something so
They
cute.
look like if you mix a Ewok, a frog, and a sand person. Like that's kind of the vibe. But they're pretty great.
They remind me of Rango
Yes,
from
that's a great
Rango the
comparison.
movie as well, like a gecko or a lizard or something. I thought they were a really great addition to the species, and we see them basically. Lyco is able to communicate with them. You see a moment of realization on his face when they first talk, and he kind of clocks it that he can understand what they're saying, and he's able to serve as a translator, and he's the first to kind of lay down his weapon and just communicate and learn why they're attacking, and eventually gets them to help them bring the water back to the homestead. And he tries to talk with the grandfather about it, and he really is scared of them at first. He very much wants to attack them. He very much wants to blame them for all of his ills. And it reminds me, Asajj says something like, "You've been fighting so long, you know no other way." And it's such a great line because that's true that we see it in the Jedi as well, where they're raised not to be, fighters at first, but then that's all they've done as younglings. That's all they've seen is this war, this fighting, and it influences their direction. And it's the same for him, that he's been fighting for so long, he doesn't know any other way.
I think it really summarizes Asajj Ventress as well. It feels like before this, she's growing away from this, of course, but before this, it feels like something that she's had to learn over the past however many years it's been in universe, what, 4 years since we've met her. Um, so it's interesting that she's now imparting her own wisdom upon people who walk the same journey as her.
Well, it's a reflection on her relationship to Quinlan Voss too. Like he was the one that like kind of brought her. He's like, you don't have to be this evil person. Like I know there's good in you. Like you're not evil at your core. And she internalized that. Not getting the weeds of that book, but that's like a huge point of that book is that they kind of flip sides. But she's still, even though she's not with Quinlan, like she's still trying to bring out that good in her, even if it's subconscious.
It makes me think of a quote that I really like, that is, "If all you have is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail." And that is, she's been learning new methods, actually making friends, actually trusting in people, actually trying to work with them with diplomacy and other methods instead of just fighting. And we really see that come to a head here, where she is able to talk him down and communicate with them and have them work together. And eventually these raiders will lead her to Cipher Canyon, and her and Lyco can actually go and find the hidden path.
Well, and that brings us to the end. By the end, we find the hidden path. Lyco goes to go with them, and Ventress realizes that she can't go with the hidden path. And that's kind of her, just like how Mother Talzin says you have to let go of your heart's desire. Eventually, Ventress has to let go of her heart's desire again and realize she can't go to Quinlan again. And she turns around and leaves. And oh my gosh, Lyco decides he's going to go with her. And we ride off into the sunset together. it really, the ending of this, it really felt like this was a pilot for another show. This whole episode felt like the pilot for another show. I don't think this is going to be the last of Ventress. I don't think we brought Ventress back to life just for 3 15-minute episodes of the Tales show. And I don't think we introduced this new character to hang out with Ventress only to just forget about it. I have to imagine they have plans going forward. I think we were all expecting something to do with Ventress in the new show they were going to announce. I don't know how she would fit into a Darth Maul show. I don't know if she would be in that. But I'm wondering if there's something else coming for her. I would absolutely love to see.
A lot of speculation before Maul Shadow Lord was announced was something revolving around the Hidden Path.
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe, okay, this is another connection to the Hidden Path. We've not had any comics, any stories really that have fully focused on that. We've heard Quinlan's involved in it, but we've not seen him at all actually with it. And so that was my suspicion, was it's leading towards something like that. But then they turn away from it and go away from it. And so now I don't know.
Yeah, that's something that could intersect into the Maul show, but I don't really see that being the case unless Maul just runs for a really long time. And I don't want Ventress's story to be like a footnote of Maul's story. Like I want her to have her own thing. Because Ventress is one of my favorite characters, and I was, then when she came back for Bad Batch, I was very conflicted because I was obviously excited to like get more Ventress stuff, but Dark Disciple was like almost a perfect book, and I was like, I don't know how they're going to do this, and I think they did a great job with this set of episodes, respecting Dark Disciple and like this isn't for nothing, but they definitely can't leave it here. Like they've got to. I hope they have something concrete in mind about where they want to take this. Because I feel like they're setting up something like where she and Quillis do get to reunite somehow. Like it seems kind of mean spirited to set it up where they could like never see each other again. And that's not the vibe of Star Wars too often.
All right, are we ready to move on to Cad Bane?
Let's do it.
Yeah, a very different direction in terms of light versus dark, and that's what Tales has often been, is kind of a more uplifting character versus a character that's more down in the dirt and the grime of the universe. And Cad Bane is maybe the darkest and dirtiest, in my opinion.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what we already knew Cad Bane to be before this episode. He was a bounty hunter. He was debuting in Clone Wars, and he was just a bounty hunter trying to break in to steal some. Does he first appear in Holocron Heist, I think, when he's trying to steal holocrons?
I believe so. Yeah.
That's pretty much how we know him. He's not a terribly dynamic character, and he's not supposed to be. And he's just a bounty hunter. So it's interesting that we're diving into this now and trying to find out, well, how did he become a bounty hunter? How did he go bad? So this is another one of those, Star Wars loves to do it. Let's find out why someone's evil. And so we dive into this one is a little bit different than the past two, where it does resume the past arc where it does resume the time jumps. And we're going to start off with Cad Bane as a child, or rather Colby. Yeah. I don't know if it's Colby Bane or what, but Colby.
Colby Bane. How old do you think he is at this point? Like 8, 10, 12,
no older than
somewhere
12,
around. If we think Theros' age around the same way that humans do, which for now that might be the case. The next story that comes out, it might be different, and we'll just roll with the punches whenever that happens. But there is a case file from Star Wars Scum and Villainy that says that Cad Bane was born in 62 BBY. So
interesting.
He's if we can pause it, okay, he's maybe at most 12, so this might be around 50 BBY or so. There's no other indication, really. There's nothing outside of this world that we know. We don't know what world it is, if it's Duros or if it's somewhere else. There's a lot of Duros around, but there's also just humans and other things, other species, all kind of around this city that he's in.
I feel like if it was Duro, I feel like they would have said it. Since there were so many other species, I'm speculating that this is just another unnamed planet. This episode really did this season really didn't like naming things. Because
I think Andor just spoiled us. I think this is not too different than a lot of Star Wars projects.
Andor just spoiled us.
So are you saying that
This
this was Yavin 4?
Is this Yavin 4?
This is Yavin 4, right?
We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out.
But I thought they did a good job establishing the scene here. You know, we haven't had another Star Wars Tales project that like everything took place on the same setting. They did a really good job of establishing like a handful of locations. Like this is a store that they frequent. Like this is the police station, and you know, there's like you kind of get a lay of the land, which Star Wars doesn't always do a very good job of. So I thought that was neat. And I thought it was neat that they, you know, in previous Tales stories, we've had like stories out of through line, like, you know, like Count Dooku, his was like, it's very, you're following Dooku's like descent into darkness, but they're like three independent stories that aren't linked together. But this was the first one that was like, it's three separate stories, but they're very heavily tied together. Like you couldn't watch one of these on its own without the context of things that came before it. And I thought I thought that was a really neat storytelling device. I think that was something that was really neat was with the opening of this was you see Colby and his friend Nero, who's like the other protagonist of the story, hanging out together, being mischievous children. But you kind of get these like lurking shots of a guy that has Cad Bane silhouette, and so you're like, is Cad Bane this little blue child, or is he this other guy? And like, Cad Bane going to be off with these children, or is one of these children going to become Cad Bane? And so I thought that was a neat like thing to keep you on your toes.
We do find out that this gentleman's name is Laszlo, which is an interesting name for Star Wars. I don't know why. I just thought that was interesting. They do, you know, we see them, they're clearly some kind of like street urchin. And you know, they're not committing necessarily crimes, or at least hard crimes. But they don't seem to have parents around. I don't know where their parents are, but I'm speculating that they're living by themselves on the streets. People call them street rats. They cost that beautiful droid. And I don't remember what the model is. I wrote it down.
It's a protocol droid of some type.
It's an RA7 protocol droid.
It is an RA7, and the reason I care so much is because one of my favorite droid characters is also an RA7. Is it RA or AR? AR7.
Is it for LOA?
It's AR. It is AP5.
Oh, AP5. Okay.
I love AP5. I love AP5 so much. So it was fun to see. I like this model. Seems particularly very like prim and proper, and there's something I just love about it. It's just so funny. So I love me some AP5. So I also enjoyed this one. I think this guy may have also had a name. Not that it really
CB.
matters.
Yeah.
CB. Yeah, CB. We also noticed that the kids, you know, just like any kid, they want candy, or crunchies is what they call them. We also see these crunchies appearing as cereal in Andor. Cyril is eating them in season 1. So I thought that was kind of a fun little nod that crunchies exist here too. And then what happens? Laszlo gets involved.
Yeah, he sees them as an investment, is what he calls it. It's so ominous that he sees this kind of scam that they pulled on CB, stealing a couple of the fruit, and he's basically wanting to now put them under his wing. So he gives them a coin, and then they go buy a bunch of crunchies, which that coin must have been a crazy important high value coin. That they had one coin and they bought a bunch of candy, a bunch of crunchies. And then they see him again kind of that next day or that evening after they've pigged out on all this candy, and he says, hey, you know, do you want to earn 5 times as much? And Nero is like, yeah, like, let's do it. And Colby's like, hold on, no, let's talk about this. And he then gets them to do 10 instead of 5. So he's kind of the ringleader, the mastermind of this group of 2.
Laszlo mentions that he's given them a taste of the good life. I almost think of it like a drug dealer giving you first taste free, and then you want to keep coming back for more. Well, they're going to keep coming back for more, and he's grooming them to be criminals for him. It doesn't last too long. So we're gonna go on our first little heist. And they're gonna sneak back into, it's like this back room. I don't know if it's like a gambling joint or what. And they're gonna distract the guards while Laszlo goes in with his team and steals the money. Something I noticed, it's these, like you mentioned, it's these coins. It's not credits. It's not Republic credits. Is this a planet with the Republic, or is this a planet not connected to the Republic? I don't know how that works. It doesn't look like any currency that we've ever seen before.
You just like
So I don't know.
Yeah, it
how
could
to
be a
run-
local credit or a local currency of some
currency.
sort. Yeah.
I guess I just pictured all Star Wars just had the same currency.
Well,
it makes sense that there's.
and remember, like
currencies,
Tatooine, like they don't take the Republic credits.
But Laszlo essentially tells the boys to distract the kind of the leader of this gambling room, and so they start banging on stuff in the alleyway and pull him out, and then that's when him and his gang bust in and steal all the money and get out, and then it doesn't work out for the leader of that gambling room who tries to go after Laszlo. He just guns him down in cold blood, and then Colby and Nero try and escape, try and run, but Colby gets away. He kind of slides coolly over the police car and gets away, but Nero gets captured and gets grabbed by the police droid, I think.
And that leads us, he's kind of initiated into the family, almost like it feels very Godfather-esque with him sitting in the back of the car, and he's kind of part of the family now. So clearly he's been inducted into this crime syndicate. And we're going to come back years later. One thing I want to mention is while I just rewatched these, something I noticed was that this first episode has a warmer tone than the next two episodes. Visually, like it's warmer. And I think that's kind of interesting. When you're looking at the childhood of Cad Bane, it's more like golden days, beautiful rosy glasses type of thing. And then when we look at the next two episodes, it's going to get a lot colder in color tone. Kind of to represent Cad Bane's descent. And this is where we first hear him referenced as Cad Bane instead of Colby. Laszlo's off to go do a job in Cad Bane's old neighborhood. And he's not allowed to go. He has to stay behind with the lovely, lovely Erin, or at least Cad Bane must think she's lovely.
So Cad gets left behind in this job in his old neighborhood, and he's not happy about it. He really wanted to go. He wanted to go back to his old neighborhood. And when the ship comes in, they come in hot, they crash. He goes on asking where Laszlo is, and Laszlo was gunned down by the marshal. And from that moment, he is bent on revenge. He wants nothing else except to go after the marshal and gun them down, and nothing's going to stop him at that point.
So he and Erin, they leave whatever planet. I don't know if they're on a different planet or a different part of the planet.
I think it's the same. I thought it was.
I think it's the same planet. I was interpreting it as the same planet. So they run off to the old city, and they start looking for the marshal, and they run into our old friend Nero, and it turns out that Nero has, taken part in what is that program called that youth go through, troubled youth go through, that steers them straight, steered straight program.
What's that program that's named that steers the youth straight?
Steered straight. I wasn't. Others are.
Yeah, he's a deputy now.
Deputy marshal.
He's a deputy.
Yeah.
And he, Cad basically says, if you know what's good for you, you'll stay out of my way. And Nero says back to him, no, I won't.
Yeah, he basically says, like, are you the lawman that gunned down Laszlo? And he says, no, that was the marshal. And he's trying to give him a chance, right? Nero wants to give Cad a chance to do something better, to not just go down this dark path. But no one is going to talk him out of it.
Well, and they separate and they go back to like their home base, and Cad's like ranting to Erin, and Erin very not subtly at all hints to him that she is pregnant. She says that we have something to live for, and Cad's just on a tear, as men tend to be, not paying attention to obvious signs. But they they he goes back to get his revenge. He doesn't heed Nero or Aaron's warnings.
Yeah, I like a line that she uses that she says, there's a lot more at stake than you realize.
Yeah.
Alluding to the fact that she's pregnant with his child, and that if he's just going to throw away his life for revenge, then he's losing a lot more than he realizes.
And she says that while she's holding.
Yeah.
Again, the audience has been very aware of what's
It's very
going on.
clear. Yeah.
They hit you in the face with it.
Yeah. And so he goes to the town and just shoots through a window. I couldn't tell if it was the candy shop again. Was it the same spot? Because he shoots through a window and then throws a grenade through, but I wasn't sure if it was a spot we saw in the first
I
episode.
interpreted it as that. I don't know for a fact.
Okay.
I think did you guys notice he shot for himself?
Yeah, in the reflection.
No. He looked at his
reflection.
If you looked at the reflection, it was his childhood self. And he shoots that spot,
yes.
and it shoots him, and he kind of dissipates. And I thought that was really interesting. This is really where he's making his decision, is to give up. I'm sure at this point he's not innocent, but he's giving up a life without heavy crime.
Yeah, this is like his path of no return, basically. Then
exactly. And he draws the marshal out. We have a little showdown between the marshal and Cad Bane. It feels very westerny. We'll see another westerny take in the next episode, but they kind of have a western showdown, and Cad Bane kills the marshal.
Yeah, it is very much like a showdown on the dusty streets, except they're in the city, and a city very reminiscent of Chicago in my eyes. I grew up near Chicago, and so seeing like the elevated roadways and stuff like that made me think of it. But
Cad stuff is always western, even in the Clone Wars. Like Book of Boba Fett's like super western,
western, and then of course he's himself going to die in a showdown. In what 30 years?
Yep. A while,
give or take.
Yeah, and so we see when that shootout happens, it's really quick, but you see Cad kind of move out of the way of the shot and then fires 2 shots and gets the marshal, and Nero is there and sees that, but then on the other side, Aaron is behind him, and she took the shot from the marshal that he specifically dodged out of, put himself first, moved out of the way, and it hits her. It's, again, very clear that he's putting himself first. He's not thinking about others and what's going on around him. He's one-track mind. He's laser focused on this one thing, and it's to the detriment of those around him.
It's really sad that we see here that he's making selfish choices. And, the first arc with Asajj Ventress is very much a redemption. It's really not a redemption arc because she's been redeemed by that point, but it was her becoming a better person. And Cad Bane's arc is the opposite. He's very much becoming a worse person. It's kind of sad watching that, knowing he's not going to turn around in anything. We know he's going to die.
How
like
the story
that.
Ends. And
we know how the story ends. Just like in Star Wars, always doesn't mean the journey isn't any less fun, though. And so Aaron says to him, she's on the ground now. She's saying, you have to let this go. We have a future together. Again, I think she's holding her belly at that point too. And she kind of reaches up and steals the gun. And so he can't buy her because she's trying to save him. And he goes to jail.
And that gives us our time jump.
Yep.
Because the next episode just jumps straight into, we're following a speeder with a Trandoshan, and it meets with one of the guys from Laszlo's crew, Tay Gruddy, and there's another person watching them from the shadows that reports to Nero, who's now the marshal. Hey, a couple of the associates of Cad Bane are meeting up. You should know about it. And he's like, well, no big deal. Like, he has 5 more years. But then they look it up, and he's been released on a technicality, the classic plot device of a technicality. So someone is out of prison early.
And we also, very importantly in this scene, get a little boy runs in named Isaac, and it is Nero's son. He calls him Papa. Um, and when you introduce a child into a darker story, it's always going to elevate the stakes.
We
He's
also kind of
and he's an adorable
Yeah.
little kid, kind of hanging out at the police station. I grew up watching Andy Griffith. He reminds me of Opie, hanging out at the police station and just kind of being like around the desk and stuff. And it was really he's a really adorable kid in the show that is very dark.
Star Wars has had to make it cute.
we're also oh, it sure does. Um, we also, it's not really explicitly stated, but it's very much implied that Nero went on to marry Erin, or at least partner with her, and this is their child together. I thought it was fascinating that they're both green and they produced a blue child. So it makes you maybe wonder if this is not Nero's child, at least biological child. Um, Everyone's terrified of Cad Bane coming back. Um, and it's interesting at first when everyone sees, like Tay Gruddy on the streets. He's like, hey, he served his time. We're moving on. But when it's Cad Bane, he's suddenly frightened a little bit more. And Cad Bane, of course, does come back. And the first thing he wants to do is find out about Erin. Where's Erin?
Yeah, it's the first thing he asks. And he learns that she married Nero and had a son together. And that, again, just sets him off.
It's interesting that that's all that was relayed to him at first, when it seems like Tay Gruddy does know what happened. I think he mentions it in the bar, but he doesn't mention that she's dead.
Right.
So we have our showdown now between Nero and Cad Bane that we knew was coming. I like how he calls him Colby.
Yeah, when they first encounter each other.
He sends Isaac away, and unfortunately Isaac makes his way back just in time to be in the middle of a firefight. And Cad Bane sees the child. It's interesting. I mean, he basically says that he's going to take care of Isaac the way that Nero took care of Erin. He doesn't realize at this point that he's talking about his own child. And so Cad Bane and Nero show down, and Nero does not make it out of that one alive. We have another Western moment where they're going to have a shoot off. And Nero misses, and Cad Bane hits his mark.
Yeah, we see Isaac run up to Nero, and then I think it's the mayor comes up as well afterwards. Cad Bane's people had been shot as well off of the building tops, and I think there's a moment where Cad Bane realizes.
They say something like, Nero says something. Cad's like, you took everything from me.
Everything.
And he says,
me.
not everything.
Yep.
Everything.
Implying.
Yeah.
And Cad makes like the smallest of gestures towards Isaac, but I feel like in most Star Wars stories, like he would try to make a bigger gesture to try to get his son on his side, but he really doesn't even try that hard. And as all the people arrive to mourn Nero, Cad leaves.
To me, it just shows that Cad Bane is given multiple chances to do something better, to turn it around. And this is still really early in his life. This is he's younger than 30, according to timeline, from what we can tell, because we see him appear as a bounty hunter in the Darth Maul comics in BBY 33. And so he's still a young person, a youngish person at this time, and has an opportunity to make a better life. And he rejects it. He continues going down that darker path, even at all of these opportunities.
And he doesn't even just...
It doesn't change his outlook.
He seems to experience no conflict. Like, I really, at no point, he had the barest hint of conflict when Nero got arrested in the first episode, and he went with Laszlo's gang. And then he really had no remorse about Erin and Nero in the second episode here. And he learns he's a kid, and he has like the smallest moment of like a negligible moment, really, of acknowledging that he has a son.
And it goes to his character that we see in the Clone Wars in Bad Batch. Like, he kidnaps children. He just guns people down at a moment's notice. Like, he is perhaps probably the most ruthless bounty hunter in all of Star Wars. We even see moments with Boba Fett being a little bit not quite as ruthless like that in comics and other things, Book of Boba Fett. We never see that with Cad Bane. And so I'm kind of glad that that's how it is, because I didn't want to feel sympathetic for this person who has done so many terrible things and has always done that. And so seeing that he kind of has always been that way gave me a little bit of, okay, they're not trying to make us sympathetic for such a terrible person. And I appreciated that.
Well, and it really follows the trend of the previous two Tales of series where in the first season, Tales of the Jedi, you had Dooku. His arc was just a real bummer. And then in Tales of Morgan Elsbeth, her arc's just a real bummer. there's no high points for these characters. It's just like sad thing after sad thing, that they had multiple opportunities to make things be different and they chose not to. And the same is true here.
I like that we have those parallels though between all these Tales shows.
Well, and all three series are kind of like in concert with each other. Like the two stories are kind of like a mirror image of each other. You know, like Ahsoka and Dooku, those were both like Jedi that left the Order and went on very different journeys. With Barriss and Morgan, those were both people that were Force users that were presented with the Empire and chose very different paths. And here we have Ventress and Cad Bane, who both had like dark backstories, tragedy in their life, and Ventress chose to become a better person. Cad chose to be stay and self-destruction.
And I like that we also see the parallel of this is Asajj's later life versus this Cad's early life. And Ahsoka was the same way. We see Ahsoka when she's younger and Dooku as he grows older. And so that parallel kind of exists there too, that we see Cad Bane's beginnings and so far Asajj Ventress's endings.
Mm-hmm. What was between the two arcs? What was your favorite?
That's a tough question because Ventress is one of my favorite characters and I loved everything about it. I think personally subjective, I think the first arc, the Ventress arc, was my favorite, but I think the Cad Bane one is a more like complete narrative. Like I think it was a neat story following him from childhood through this like pivotal moment in his adulthood, and tying it all together really neatly. I think that's probably like the objective better one. Like Ventress is really felt like a backdoor pilot for something, but it's a backdoor pilot for a TV show I'm very excited about.
Yeah. We keep calling it a backdoor pilot, guys. I don't know if don't know if this is actually the case. I hope it's the case, but
it's our hope.
I don't know. Mike, what do you think? Good point.
So when I first watched Tales of the Underworld on May 4th, I was really conflicted because I liked the other layout of them, of showing various snippets that are kind of connected but not directly tied to the same characters. And so when I first watched this, I didn't like it as much as those other two. Now that I've watched it again, and I think it always happens with Star Wars, the more you watch it, the better it gets, the more you appreciate little connections and understanding. I like both of them, but I think I agree with Austin that I like the Asajj Ventress more because it's a character that I've cared more about. I've seen the change in the character and growth, and that over time. I remember watching Star Wars Clone Wars when she first appeared in 2003 as this completely random, bald, white character that we knew nothing about. And now we know so much more about her, and I really like that. And so I think I appreciate those stories more, but I think I agree that the Cad Bane is probably more of a complete narrative. If we get more with Asajj Ventress and Lyco, then maybe these will be, feel like more of a part of that and in the larger Star Wars narrative, a more important piece. But I do think the Cad Bane ones were more complete, a complete story versus the Asajj Ventress ones.
That's how I felt about Barriss Offee in the second Tales of the Empire. I want more. It doesn't feel like we're ending right there. It feels like there should be more to it after that. I feel like, I don't know where I read this or heard this. I feel like they basically said that she's not dead. So we need to kind of get a conclusion there. Just like with Asajj, we absolutely need a
Well,
continuation
and
there.
Asajj and Varys
Um,
notably have a connection. So
yes, they do. So we get the same. That'd be good. Ooh, I'm excited now. Let's write our own show. Okay, well, speaking of, what do we want to see next? What's next for Tales? Hopefully next year. I hope we get another. I'd like to keep up with this once a year thing. Number one choice. What do you guys think?
I mean, selfishly, and I think coming off of Andor, this would be interesting. But I would love a Tales of the Senate. I think there's a lot, or maybe you call it Tales of the Republic if you wanted to make it sound less political. But I think you could do something really interesting there. I think the two characters I would love to see paralleled would be Padme and Palpatine, like their early days in the Senate, like how they
So that'd
started
be
and
interesting.
everything. I think that would be really cool because they're both senators from Naboo. I think that would be my favorite. You could also do Mon Mothma and Palpatine. I think that would be an interesting contrast too. Um, and you could even, if you wanted to, which I think this would be really neat, be like early days as Chancellor, like Chancellor of the New Republic, Chancellor of the Republic. I think that could be a cool uh, contrast too. But that would be my choice.
I have two. It's hard to choose, but I would love to see either Tales of the High Republic, so diving into a few of the characters, and it would be hard because a lot of that requires a lot of reading and a lot of catching up for so many people that haven't read those books.
Mm-hmm.
But I could also see Tales of the Resistance and dive into kind of those bookends of this era that we've explored so heavily from the prequel and original trilogy, and explore before the prequels or after the originals, and explore some more of the kind of Resistance timeline. I think that either of those I would be all on board with, and see more of the characters that we've, these are characters that we've seen snippets of, we've learned little pieces about, except for the first Tales of the Jedi, which was two characters we knew a lot about. These other ones have been, important characters, but not main focus characters.
Yeah. I would love Tales of the Resistance. I mean, I'd love everything that's been mentioned. I'd like to see Tales of the Resistance just because we need more content in that era, um, to flesh it out more. I feel like we've been avoiding it a little bit lately. I'm excited. I'm sure that once we get the new Rey movie, we won't be avoiding it quite as much. But gosh, I really want to see more sequel trilogy material. I'd be interested to see something like Tales of the Force. I'd like to see those non-organized, or at least like officially organized Force religious groups. So like Night Sisters, maybe something about the Bendu, anything that talks about, or the Force priestesses, anything that talks about the Force in a way outside of how the Jedi and the Sith view it, I think would be really interesting to see the way that it impacts other cultures. That'd be a little bit different in that I don't know what the two arcs would fit into right there. It wouldn't necessarily be about characters we already knew, which I think probably means it's unlikely. I'd be interested in the Tales of the Sith, of course. Anything to explore Palpatine a little bit more, I think would be interesting. I don't know if that'd be an opportunity to explore more about his background. I don't know how much we're going to get in that, given that Plagueis is no longer canon. The novel Plagueis is no longer canon. So those are probably my two. Anything dealing with the Force is really where my heart sits.
I just hope we keep doing them.
Yeah.
I like this.
Well, and as we talked in the beginning, this is like the writer, he's done on previous projects. This was like the first thing he had, and now he's going on to the Dark Maul show. They've used the Tales series in the past as like giving people like just like an opportunity to show themselves, like to really like test out leading a project that's not hugely consequential. And I think I hope they continue to do that, because it's we all get to benefit from it. And you get to raise up some new talent as well.
It's very much a launching pad for a lot of people, is getting these little bits and then seeing what you could do and then moving on from there.
Yep.
So with Tales of the Underworld concluding and no shows really in the near horizon, we're going to be waiting until 2026 for Darth Maul Shadow Lord. We don't have any movies until next year as well. What are we going to be doing, since we've kind of been in this mode of a lot of content came out in the last couple months, and that's what we've been trying to cover? what are we looking forward to?
Well, we're probably going to see a ranking episode here from all of us. We all have, I wouldn't say horrifically different rankings. I think some of them are different, similar in some ways. Some of them are different in other ways. So we're going to talk about all of our favorites within Star Wars, not just movies, but other topics as well. We're going to jump into the next book. We're going to jump into the Crystal, what is it, the Crystal Crown?
Yeah. The next High Republic Acolyte book is the Crystal Crown featuring Yord and Jecki. We'll be able to jump on the Yord horde again just for a little.
Yes. We're all big fans of the Acolyte, so we're excited to jump back into that world.
But we're excited to do some non-review episodes here for a little bit, so you can kind of get to know us a little bit more and the things that we love about Star Wars, and you can kind of just get to know us a bit.
The Austins are going to Galaxy's Edge, so we'll have some information from Galaxy's Edge to share with y'all. Also check us out on TikTok. We're making TikToks as well, and Instagram and YouTube. You can see some of our shorts.
Yeah, and then at the end of August, we're going to be all going to Dragon Con together, hopefully competing in some Star Wars trivia, but also just having a blast celebrating Star Wars and other fandoms with a lot of other people.
Won't that just be embarrassing for us if we don't even make it on the stage?
We just won't talk about it.
It's hard. It's hard.
We'll just say we
It's
didn't try.
really hard trivia.
It's really hard trivia. Now we all know a lot about Star Wars, but some of those people that make it up there are really, really good. So hopefully we took some practice tests and
Yeah,
you know, Mike, you do real well on those practice tests.
I'm trying.
Austin, I do okay. I think we passed a couple of them, but not all of them.
Yeah.
It's always
pretty much, one of the reasons. Yeah,
it's always the ships that
What's
did
that?
me.
It's
I
one of
just
the
can't be
reasons-
bothered to learn a ship.
Yes. I can't remember gun names.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just my thing. But
I've honestly,
it's gonna
with the
be fun.
podcast, I've been writing them down to try and remember certain ones, like trying to remember the Republic gunship. What's the actual name? Well, it's the Low Altitude Assault Transport, the LAAT, and trying to like look into like, oh, the RA-7 protocol droid, like remember what those droid names are and stuff like that. So with this, I've been able to dive in a little deeper and have a justification to nerd out a little bit further.
Can we get a Star Wars test prep book, just like the SAT prep books? I would love to have that.
That'd be hilarious.
Highlight everything.
Yeah,
Big flashback.
But
I need sticky notes for my reference books.
There you go.
But be sure to let us know if there's anything you're interested in. We'd be happy to take some suggestions from the listeners.
You guys have any ideas for future Tales episodes? We'd love to hear your thoughts for the future of the Star Wars Tales series too.
Yeah, and just leave us a comment, leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to us, because it really helps us reach out to a further audience. We want to grow a community of positive-minded Star Wars fans, and you can help us do that by connecting us with more people.
All right, guys, may the Force be with you.
Thanks everyone for joining us to talk about the galaxy far, far away. You can find us on Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok as Rogue3 Media. We look forward to talking with you at the next rendezvous point.